There are several ways that you can go about identifying triads and sevenths and their inversions, but I'll go through a step-by-step process that I think best helps to eliminate or at least limit the possibility of the numerous errors that you might encounter. So it's a four-step process, and the first one may seem really obvious, but it's good to at least include it right off the bat and keep it in your mind, is ask yourself, is it a triad or a seventh? Now that seems so obvious, right? Like you're looking at a chord and you're asking yourself whether it's a triad or a seventh, and it seems like you never make that mistake. But it happens more often than you think. That you'll go along and you've made up your mind for one reason or another, maybe because you've been on a roll or whatever, and you realize, oh wait a minute, that's not a seventh, that's a triad, or vice versa. So ask yourself that. That'll eliminate the possibilities and save you a lot of trouble and time. So that's number one. Number two is always draw in root position. Now, in a lot of ways, you might be drawing it or identifying it, but always take a look and see. This helps you to check whether or not it's in root position. So the way that you look at its in root position is that they're all on lines, or they're all in spaces. And the most important thing is not only should all the notes be on all lines or all spaces, you're going to find that that's going to be on all lines and all spaces within one octave. So within one octave, are they all on lines or just spaces? And there's a little acronym that I like to, you take this, turn this into an acronym, ADIRP, ADIRP, ADIRP. Kind of fun to say. Say it yourself. A derp. Yeah. Okay. So that's your second step. Third step, after you've identified all of those things, is so then ask yourself, so what's the inversion? Okay. Then at that point, you then try and figure out whether is it root position, is it second inversion, is it first inversion, whatever it might be, because now that you put it in root position, you can tell whether did you have to move things around, and if you did, how did you move it around, and that will tell you what the bass note was, which will give you the inversion. Okay, and finally the last step, move that down here, is what type of triad or seventh chord. Now you could do number 3 and 4 in reverse order. You could do this first, you can do number 4 first, and then do number 3. But the nice thing about doing number 3 before number 4 is that it helps eliminate certain mistakes that have happened. That if you try to identify the triad or seventh chord, and because you're doing a million of these in a row, you might have forgotten, oh wait, it wasn't in root position, and you accidentally tried to identify it as root position. By recognizing whether it's in an inversion or root position off the bat, you have already written down, oh, it's in root position, or it's in first inversion, or whatever it might be. And then, now that you're looking at it again, since you've A-derped it, you can now look whether or not, you can now do a better analysis of what kind of seventh or what kind of triad it is. Okay, so let's go through the steps with an example. So I'm going to put one here. This is an example I have here. Let's take this out, and I'm going to create another one. Okay, there's your example, and I would encourage you at this point, pause the video and try and work it out using those 4 steps that we just talked about. If you need to rewind, take a look, that's fine, but we'll go through this in a second. Okay, so you've paused it and you've done an analysis, so let's take a look. Step 1. Okay, step 1, is it a triad or a seventh chord? Okay, we see 4 different pitches, so it is therefore a seventh chord. Step 2. A-derp, always draw in root position. Is it in root position? It's all in, this particular example is is all on spaces and it's within one octave, so yes, it is already in root position. Step number three. So what's the inversion? Well, we've determined that it's already in root position, so we know the inversion. Let's move this down a little bit. So now we know the inversion is actually root position. So that's step number three. And then finally, step number four, this is in a lot of ways the most complicated part, is figuring out what type of triad or seventh. And in this case, it's a seventh chord. So let's take a look. Let's build this up. We have an A, C sharp, E, G. So off the top of your head, many of you should already know this is a major triad. So it's not going to be a diminished or a half diminished or a minor minor seventh. It's either going to be major minor or major major seventh, because we have this major triad down here. And if we look at A to G, we can check by plugging that into an A major scale. Since G does not belong in an A major scale, we know it's not a major seventh, so it's a minor seventh. So the type of seventh chord we have here is a major minor seventh, okay, in root position. Okay, so we've done all those steps. Hopefully that was helpful in some way. And let's actually do one more. Okay, and I'm going to draw one right here, still in treble clef. Let's actually do that. So again, let's pause it and see if you can figure out what it is. Okay, so you've taken the time and you've had a chance to go through this. So step one, is it a triad or seventh? Well, it's got three pitches, so we know it's going to be some sort of triad. So that's step one. We've now determined it's a triad. Step two, A derp. Always draw in root position. Is this in root position? It is not, because we have one note in a space and two notes on a line. So let's move it around so that they're either all on spaces or all on lines. It doesn't matter, but it's easier to move one note rather than two. So let's put this A to a line. They're all on lines now. It's all within an octave. And so we now know the root is D. So number three is, what's the inversion? Well, we had an A before, and now that we know that the root is D, and A was in the bass beforehand, we know that A is in this chord, the fifth, so therefore it's in second inversion. So let's write that down. It's some sort of second inversion chord with the root of D, and let's take a look. Finally, what type of triad is it? D to F. If you plug that into a D major scale, F natural is not found in a D major scale, so we know it's not a major third. That's in fact a minor third. And we know D to A, that fits in a D major scale. So we know that's a perfect fifth. So we have here a D minor triad. So we have a D minor triad in second inversion. We'll put the little symbol right below and see if we can make this work. D minor 6/4. Voila. Hopefully that was helpful. And hopefully that'll eliminate the number of errors that can potentially happen whenever you are identifying triads, sevenths, and their inversions.